This is one of our biggest struggles. Like if we saw them doing something that we knew they shouldn't do or wasn't good for them or wasn't even safe, whatever it was our job to step in and protect them from themselves and give them consequences to their action, like that we enforced. That might have looked like grounding. That might have looked like whatever that was, but we have to let go of that because they're not under our thumb anymore. Like, and they're going to make their mistakes and do stupid things. And we can't ground them now so that they'll see the light and like, that's a struggle, right?
It's almost like passing the torch of responsibility. Like, at what point do you pass that torch of you are responsible for your life?
Mm-hmm.
Does that happen in marriage? Like when they get married? Does that happen when they move out of your house? I think everybody answers that question a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So what was your experience? So let's...
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke.
And I'm Dr. Lynn.
Thank you so much, as you yawn, for joining us today, ladies.
Midlife. Hey, need a nap in the middle of the day. It's
right?
The middle of the afternoon. So do you nap?
No.
Never, right?
No, I almost always feel worse after I've napped. I'm one of those people, but I also feel really guilty. Like, I can't believe I just wasted 10 minutes napping when I could have been doing something.
You diligent doer, you.
But you like a good nap.
Yes, I don't seem to ever be able to find time to take one these days, but I do. On the weekend, there's nothing better than knowing like your schedule is clear in the afternoon and you can't nap after 3. That's a rule because it's too late. You'll affect your sleep. But
you crack me up, the rules you make.
I have a lot of rules. There are a lot of rules to this whole whatever this is.
I'm just envisioning you like I can see you like Mimi, who was like, in her 90s, but you'd walk in the room and she'd just be relaxing in a recliner, nodding off during the day. That would be you. You're gonna really love your naps then.
Ooh, that's something to look forward to. All right. Well, napping is not our topic. We're not even talking about sleep of any style or way, but we are talking about parenting and how that style changes as your children transition into adulthood.
Oh, somebody else wrote in and asked us about this, right?
We got some tough questions
ladies,
this quarter.
Can you just take it easy on us? Because
we talk about clothes and shoes for once.
Right. I know. They're much more fun to talk about. But
well, there's probably other more qualified people for that.
I don't know. I think you look pretty darn good.
I like to think I'm an expert on that.
Yeah, you've brought me a long way. As we're veering off topic again, but you brought me a long way with the style game. So there's something
let's get back.
But let's get back to what we were talking about.
Yeah. I think, again, reading between the lines, I'm wondering if this is coming from someone who's just sort of like unsure of when to let that authoritative parent title, like the style of I'm the boss, do as I say, I'm your leader, when to know or how to know when to transition that, or basically even just knowing what comes after that, what's safe, what's advised, what's healthy, what's smart, because something we talk about often when we talk about raising kids into their adulthood is we're never going to stop being their mom.
Right.
We're always going to be their parent, but it's switching from more of a boss style, like coach, like do this, get in there on the field and make this play, to and a leader, say, also that title, to being more of a advisor, like a counselor, a consultant.
Right. Well, we were also their punisher's not the word. But we were capable of drawing a line in the sand. And if we saw them, I think this is one of our biggest struggles. Like if we saw them doing something that we knew they shouldn't do or wasn't good for them or wasn't even safe, whatever it was our job to step in and protect them from themselves and give them consequences to their action, like that we enforced. That might have looked like grounding. That might have looked like whatever that was, but we have to let go of that because they're not under our thumb anymore. Like, and they're going to make their mistakes and do stupid things, and we can't ground them now so that they'll see the light and
It's
that's a struggle,
it's
right?
almost like passing the torch of responsibility. Like, at what point do you pass that torch of you are responsible for your life?
Mhm.
Does that happen in marriage? Like when they get married? Does that happen when they move out of your house? I think everybody answers that question a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So what was your experience? So let's talk about like how did your parents transition that? I mean, many of us now have much more of a friendly, like, again, my mom is always momming me,
Yeah.
but at one point over the years it transitioned from her constantly being on me to just more of a, hey, would you like my advice in this?
Right. Um, no, I don't think I ever got that. I can remember so one my I feel like my parents did not helicopter us. They let us do our thing, maybe almost to a fault because I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing and they just, for whatever reason didn't I mean, they didn't outright know what I was doing, but they also didn't look into it super closely. So they kind of let us, I think, fall down a little bit here and there. But the one piece that I do remember, and this would be applicable to our group because it was when I had my first kid, right? And we were doing so much stupid stuff. Like I look back now, like I'm like, now is the time that we should have a kid because when you're like, I was like 27, I had no idea what I made so many. It's amazing that Anthony is who he is, and I didn't totally screw him up. But I mean, Ken and I were just as smart as we are. Like we just missed the mark on a lot of things. So my point is, we had two perspectives. We had Ken's mom who was like, all right, they're going to have to figure this out. They're going to do what they're going to do, but I'm going to be here and support them in their decision making and keep my mouth shut, but just be loving and helpful and all the things to my mom, where it was like, you knew that she didn't agree with what you were doing and she couldn't stand to be around. So she just left and like had to go to the beach for a couple days. And like, so there's two very different ways of approaching things. And I think that I think for me, I don't know which way is right, but I think for what I needed at the time and what I hope I will do with my kids is like, this is, I think that at the crux of our struggle is at some point they have to completely live their own life and you cannot live it for them. And that's so hard for us with anyone that we love. I mean, I remember when my mother-in-law got sick and just the having to let go of like, I can't make her health decisions for her. I can't live her life for her. I have to love her in the midst of it. And even if I think I know something that might really help her, she's going to make her choices. And that's got to be okay because it's not my life to live. That was hard enough with my mother-in-law, who I adored. Doing that for your kid,
Agonizing, right?
it's agonizing, but also they're adults.
The alternative is they don't have that struggle, and that the fall down is how they learn. And, we were just talking last night about the people in our life, that some of the people we know that are the most successful are people that had really awful stories,
Mm-hmm.
made major mistakes, or didn't have the means, and they fell down very often. And I think it's almost a gift to have that in your past and in your experience, to
Mm-hmm.
have some major mistakes to learn from. And that's when we think about parents of the 70s and the 80s, like our parents that raised us, it just was much more natural. Like it was just unspoken. Like we just, all right, well, they got to learn for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And now with the years and decades that have passed and the generations that have come up, it seems like more and more we're swooping in to rescue them
Yeah.
to their own detriment.
Right. Yeah, because if they don't learn that there's at some point they have to figure out that they've got to figure it out on their own because you can't always pick up the pieces for them. And by the way, there's some discernment there too, because if I go back to like the case where I was talking about when my first son, Anthony, was born, we were doing stupid stuff, but it wasn't anything that was putting him in danger. I mean, I made that sound worse than it was just because I was trying to be
We
funny,
know
but
you.
like,
We know that's the
do you know
case.
what I mean? It's like you have to pick your battles because some things, even though you don't think it's the right way or you wouldn't do those things the way they're doing it, like they still have to figure that out. They're different than you. They are not
Yeah.
you, and they're going
By
to
the
live their
way,
life.
I think I'm going to be in the camp of your mom because I mean, I think if you know yourself and you know that you can't help, which this will be me, I'm going to have a very hard time holding back my advice, and so to just leave the situation is sometimes a good solution for everybody involved, right? Because
That's true.
you probably weren't going to listen to her. That was
No.
established and clear.
Right.
And she, to stick around and watch that if she disagrees, it's not for everybody. It's not. So it's maybe self protection on both sides.
Yep. That's a very good point. And that's true. And you may very well do that because I've seen you even um I have seen with your grandkids that you have there's been times where you're like, I just have to zip my lip because they've got to live their life, but that's hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're doing a fantastic job. I have very little to advise. They don't need my advice. They've got it a lot, so much figured out more than I did. Like you said, like it's just crazy how our kids get to be this age and, by the grace of God,
Yep.
really. But I will say it is hard to not be in control. And if you're just a control, self professed control freak, it will be very hard, especially as a mother in law. It's, Unfortunately, a lot of women can be like an all or nothing
Mm,
where it's like, okay, well, we're going to be all hands off because I can't have my hand in the cookie jar,
yeah.
or it's having trouble holding yourself back and being all in and
Mhm.
meddling and being
Mhm.
in the middle of it.
Mhm.
But, ideally if we can get some growth behind us around that, and I think it's communication and just opening up and saying, hey, this is the reason I don't step in more is because it's hard for me to not take over. So I just want you to know that, like, the reason I'm stepping back isn't because I don't care. It's because it's hard for me to do right now at this phase
Mhm.
to not just swoop in and take over.
Sure. I think communication is always
Right.
so
Just
key.
like, why can't we just have some of those hard
Mhm.
conversations and just speak it? There's not, this is, we I wish we it was easier for us to do that. It's never easy to bring up those conversations, but we're usually happy we did. um
Right. And like we
I
were talking about, I think it was last night you and I were chatting. There's like a lot of times in those situations, if something needs to be said or you need to have a conversation, the story that we're telling ourselves in our mind about it is way different or bigger than it actually is if you will just have the conversation.
right, with your kids. So we were talking about something with one of
Hmm.
your
Well,
kids.
I think we were even talking with, oh, yeah, it was our kids,
Yeah,
but that could apply to friendship too, to anything.
anybody, honestly, like in the absence of information, we will make up our own
Yeah.
story. And instead of making up your own story and making like
Better
a
than it was.
wild fairy tale, usually, like worst case scenarios,
Mhm.
we're in the middle of
It's
all of
true.
it. Usually it's like we're the cause of it. And at the end of the day, like the real truth is just something so basic and simple and has nothing to do with us. Let's go to the source and just say, hey, this is what I'm noticing. Am I way off base?
Yeah.
Right? Very, very, you know, approach it very non emotional,
And not condescending.
not condescending, logical, just like, hey, like that's a vulnerability,
Right.
right? That's a very vulnerable act, and vulnerability takes maturity and growth,
Absolutely.
which is what we're all working on and becoming here. But
Yep.
one of the things I think, so the topic is, switching that and handing that baton over where you're not the leader, they're not responsible for who they are and their choices.
Hmm. You're not the reprimander.
Right. But you also don't want to just completely flip it and be like, hey, let's go party, or, hey, whatever. Maybe,
Or not.
or not. And you go party.
Or you
That's
are.
great. Have that fun. You guys have earned it. But I think when it comes to hard times and hard like situations, or your kids coming to you, they're going to be far more likely to come to you as a counselor, as an advisor, if you're careful and disciplined in asking the question when they're venting and they're looking at you, do you want my advice,
Hmm.
or would you just like me to listen right now?
Yes.
Just get clarification of what it is that they're looking for. 'Cause likely they haven't really thought it through. And they might first say, well, I'm just going to vent. And then once they're done, then they're going to look at you and go, okay, but what is your
Mhm.
advice?
It's so good. And that's like one of the, I think, if you hear nothing else in this talk today, hear that, right? It's so important to start that conversation with, do you want, is this a point where you want my advice or do you just want me to listen? And I have actually had that conversation too with my husband. Let's get on the same page of what I need from you right now. Cause sometimes I just want to talk too. And he's a fixer. He wants to fix everything. And that's what we want to do as moms always. We want to swoop in and fix it. And legitimately, sometimes they just need us. I think that is probably the biggest, aside from like they're gonna live their life, you can't live it for them. That's number one. Number two is like sometimes you just need to listen and not swoop in with the advice and try to fix it. And that's really hard because we've right? I mean,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Because we're basically saying, okay, we are a spectator here. We're not playing the game. And when they were in our home and it was on us, we were on the field.
yeah. Yeah, it's a crazy spot to be in. And I do find though that the more that you can just zip it and listen, right? And start the conversation. Do you need me to listen or do you want advice? The more that they will come to you and share things.
Which
But be
is
ready.
ultimately what you want.
It is.
Everyone wants that.
Or sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I just heard that. I don't know if I wanted you to share that, but for most part, yes,
You're
you
like,
want them
take
to
that
know.
back. I
Right.
can't unhear that.
Right. You have to keep your mouth from dropping on the floor. But I mean, it is true. The more that you do listen and create that safe space for them to talk, the more that they will come to you. If you're struggling in a relationship with your kids and you wish they talked to you more or called you more, really listen to that it might be a case of like just maybe you need to do a little less talking and a little more listening and just have a safe place for them to just talk without you feeling the need to parent or fix.
It's well said. That
That's a
was really well
tricky
said.
thing. And not to say, I've talked about this before on social media, and I've had some people come back and be like, that's ridiculous. This generation, they need to learn when to take advice
Yeah,
and
I've
learn
heard
from
that
us.
too.
And I get that too. Like there is a time where you need to step in, especially if, again, the discernment of knowing, is this something that's really unsafe? Like that
Yeah,
could be
like
detrimental.
if your child's at risk, but you by just overriding them even in that moment, you're risking not having that influence that you need in that moment to save them
Yeah.
from whatever it is that they're about to do.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You could still be pushing away like it's more even more ginger in that instance.
Mm-hmm. It's a tricky thing. I can't get to like they just need to listen because I'm the parent. And I know like at
Yeah,
this
I
stage
never
of life, it's just I can't get
it
there.
doesn't work that way. It's not about you. You have to meet people where they're at, including your children.
Yes, and it really is this tricky thing of like seeing them now as an adult and their own person and not your kids that you can educate and school and reprimand and give advice to, and that's not our role as they age. It's we come alongside them more as a friend, a confidant, a listener, an advice giver when they ask, right? I mean, it just in that's a odd thing. And I suppose like I was so where are you with Jordan? Because he's older and he has a family of his own. Like, because I want to say like now in these years when they're
And we
like
work
20
together.
something, it's harder because that you're still halfway between, like you're still closer to the years where they lived under your house and you still needed to step in and advise and reprimand, but I wonder what it's like because I'm not there yet when they get to be like 35 and they have their own kids.
Yeah, it's really it gets better. I think the 20s are probably pretty rocky as they were for you and I and
Mm-hmm.
most people. I think in your 30s you've developed a level of trust that they know what they're doing
Yes.
as a parent, and so you just don't worry about them as much. You kind of get to sit back and go, "Okay, I'm just going to enjoy the fruits of whatever influence I had here over this person that's living their life."
Yes.
And it's really, really about like, um, just enjoying time with them as much as you can get.
Yeah.
right?
And I think my guess would be, as you're saying, that the older they get, the easier it is to see them as more of a friend, and maybe not an equal, because they're always going to be your child, but they're an adult in their own right, living their own life, and make it easier to be a listener and a friend and advice giver, right?
I can't help myself but give him advice sometimes,
Yeah.
because if we've gone ahead and we've experienced something, we just naturally do that. We want to, I think that makes us caring people. We want
Hmm.
other people to see, like, hey, this is a mistake I made and I don't want you to have to experience that
Right.
pain. So, I mean, just the other day I gave him advice, or I asked him a question to make sure that they had thought of something, to make sure that there was a safeguard in place for them. And of course they had. But I feel like that happens less. And at this point, we're just, trying to give them as much of a break as we can and just enjoy their time, that we all get to spend together,
Yeah.
you
That's
know.
great. And I've seen the flip side of that play out in some friends' lives where, I mean, and these are friends that are like my age with kids that are maybe a little bit younger. Maybe they're a little younger than me. Their kids are a little bit younger still, right? None of them are in college yet. They're like high school or even a little bit younger. But I've seen this play out where there's a mother in law involvement where they're still parenting their child, wanting to still be really hands on. And I'm here to tell you, from what I've seen, like, it's not been my own reality, but I've seen it for friends where, like, that doesn't work out well for the daughter in law. And maybe you would say, well, I'm worried about my kid, not the in law. But you're also putting your kid in a really tight spot, because if you're creating a rift in the home and the relationship, like, you just, even if your kid seems to be welcoming it, that's not necessarily a healthy place to be.
Just as a wife, you sort of want to feel like your husband is the leader of your home a little bit, like at least in a traditional role. And I'm a traditional gal. I mean, and I think it would undermine the way I thought of my husband a little bit if his mommy was coming in to maybe insert too much.
Right. So I think we always, I guess the reason I bring that up is because, as much as I want to say the older we get, the less of a problem this is with drawing the line, is like, but for some of us, it's still a
So
problem.
this is where it goes back to, you're here, you're listening, and if this is all something you're worried about, purpose. Like, get live your
Having your
own
own
life,
purpose.
have your
Yeah.
own purpose, find it outside of your children, because
Oh.
they're going to have their own lives. And there's something about you that is so amazing and so incredible. It's your own unique set of talents and gifts, and there's a need
Hmm.
in the world for you to come alongside and give of those in another way,
Hmm.
in a different vehicle of purpose now than it used to be, which was through your children.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. And if you're back, okay, so finding your own purpose, yes. If you're also still thinking about building your relationship, and this isn't necessarily parenting your child, but like, in some cases it is, because you also want to have a good healthy relationship with them. My biggest advice there, beyond the listening over speaking and the letting them live their life, like seeing them more in a friendship way, right, like all of those things, is to meet them where they are. Like, if you want to build a stronger relationship with them, do the things they like to do. Meet them where they are. I think it's so important. We can do that in all of our relationships, right? It's not all about us.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything that gets repeated by us, it's that it's um we get to be in control of our self-care and like what we're doing for hobby and fun. But when it comes to our kid, and children, it's not about what we want. We can't control them. We can just do what's best to honor their new family units.
Mm-hmm.
And that usually includes just like being more of a counselor,
Mm-hmm.
consultant,
Mm-hmm.
on call. type of advisor,
Yes.
and you're not going to be a mainstay in there every
Mhm.
single day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you can caveat the conversation, and I've done this with my kids. You know, you maybe are not asking for advice here. If it's okay, I'm going to give you some. And by the way, I'm going to tell you what I would do in this scenario and what would be right for me, but maybe that's not right for you. And now it's going to, whatever you choose to do, it's your life. I'm here to support you, but here's how I would handle it.
That's
And
great.
that's a really good way to start that conversation
Yeah.
because it allows you to give them the advice
You're
without them
saying
feeling like you're
you're in
pointing your finger and
control.
telling them
Yep.
what to do.
Yep. Here's, you get to decide. And so you're not stealing that sense of like their own control over their lives. You're
Mm-hmm.
not taking that from them and just saying, okay, well, that's dumb. You do
Right.
it this way. You're saying, okay, but here's how I would handle it.
Right.
You're modeling, you're being an example.
Right. And that also maybe allows you to get, you're not holding on to that. And also, if for some reason you didn't say your piece and they went and did the thing and now you're holding on guilt because, oh man, if I had just told them,
Right.
so it's
I think about that a lot.
yeah, like, so that's a
When you're
tricky thing.
choosing whether or not to speak up or not to speak up, and not just with your children, with like, I just feel responsible for almost any person that's in my sphere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think about that. I go, well, what if that happened and I never said anything?
Yeah. So that can be a tough place to be with your kids. So I think leading with that, um, is and it and this is like the most basic and probably stupidest way I can make this applicable in my own life, but I think it'll make sense for a bigger picture. So, for example, my son who's in high school, it's like, what is it with high schoolers or 20 somethings? It's like it's 2 degrees and they don't need a coat. And I know this
Hey, I
probably
was
goes
that
back
person
to
trudging
younger,
up the hill in Beaconsfield and no coat,
right?
mini skirt, and like, yeah, it's like, it's like a badge of honor.
Yes,
You're
but
freezing your butt off.
right. And this is like more for like people with younger kids mostly, but when they're younger, like at least for me when they were younger, it was like I don't care if you don't want the coat, you're putting the coat on. So this is a good example. Like if he had been in middle school or elementary school, it'd have been like, put your dang coat on or you're not leaving the house. And then you're not going anywhere on the weekend. That's just how I parented. Like, I don't care if you don't want to. It's freezing. I know better than you.
Right.
But now he's like, you know, pushing 16 and I could still enforce that, but as a teen that's not helping me build any bridges with
No.
him, and he's getting old enough to have
You have
these
to
are
give him a chance to exercise his own
rights.
decision making.
Right. Yep. It's a small way to get them to the steps of making their own choices. So now the conversation is like, okay, listen, I'm going to tell you what I would do. And my best piece of advice for you is it's 3 degrees. It's freaking cold outside and you're going to do yourself a good service to put a jacket on. I'm going to tell you my piece. I have the coat right here. I would love for you to put it on and you're going to be a lot more comfortable, but it's your body. So you're going to choose to do what you want to do. And I'm going to let you make that choice.
Right.
I've said my piece. I want you to hear it. Let's go to school.
Yeah.
And he didn't put the coat on.
He didn't.
No, he did not put the coat on. But guess what? I felt good. At least I gave him the option and I told him. And you know what? He came home and he didn't have frostbite. He was okay.
I thought you were going to say, and then he whined and whined and whined because he didn't have a coat. And so I gave him mine.
Well, that would be in a mother's perfect world. It would have been him coming home the next morning and going, I was so cold. Look how red
You
my
were
hands
so
still
right,
are. You
Mom.
were right, Mom. But no, it was like, hey, I was fine yesterday and I'll be fine today, Mom. So, okay, but at least
you did your part. You did what you could do.
yeah.
And that is a good illustration of how this happens gradually.
Right.
So, there is maybe a little bit of a sense of just having it be abrupt when they move out. Like they're expecting things to change suddenly. But the truth is, it's much more of a gradual handoff of that baton, like just like it is in a relay race. Like it takes a few seconds,
Mhm.
and in human terms, in this situation, that's like months and years, where you're right in the teenage. It begins in the teenage years, and then it just sort of continues to happen until. Well,
Yeah.
every child's different, but until they're ready for it. And like I said, like when that trust is built up, that you can say, all right, I think not, I'm never going to stop worrying about them, but I think they've shown and they've proved to me that they can handle their life and that aspects of it that they need to.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. It is a constant, I think, evolution. We're constantly evolving as mothers as our kids are growing up. We're learning from them. They're still continue to learn from us. And it's all, we're all doing the best we can with what we've got. That's like my motto for life currently.
That's always been my motto, and it's true. And I think if we gave each other the benefit of the doubt of that
Yeah.
and just assumed, hey, you know what? Some people have bad intentions, but most of the time, people are just doing the best that they can with what they got and what they know. And if they know better, then it is their responsibility to do better. But sometimes we just need to tell them, just like with our children,
Yeah.
after we ask them if we can
Yes.
for permission. All right. Good place to
Exactly.
wind down.
Yes. I loved that conversation. It's
Did you?
always fun. I did. Did you not? You sounded surprised.
Yeah, it's I guess I'm there with Jordan. I always think it's going to be maybe a little different with your youngest, right?
Yeah.
And girls, but yeah, it's not a perfect. I like to be that. I like those conversations where it was like, do this, do this, do that, and this is a surefire formula. This is one of those conversations where it's really, really like it extends out, and there's so many variables. But at the end of the day, it's gradual passing off of the baton, natural, normal progression of life, and hopefully talking about it helps us all to do better.
Yes. I love that. And if you're in a feeling I've got to share this one more thing. And I probably shouldn't because many of you are going to listen and judge me and say, what kind of son did you
Ooh,
raise
I'm
and what
leaning
kind of a
in.
mother are you? But if it's going to help anyone feel a little bit better about how you parent your kids and your relationship with them, the other day, just like a week ago when Anthony moved into college, so I just threw him under the bus because I said his name. That's okay. Whatever. He's not listening. He was like, something came up in his move and we got the group text, me and my husband, well, this. And I went in and parented before I didn't ask him if he wanted advice, but I gently was like, or you could look at it this way, da, da, da. I'm not going to go any further, but you could look at it this way and try la, 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 la. And I didn't get to respond to that. I was with a friend. And so I didn't get to respond until maybe like a half hour, 45 minutes later, to which he responded, too late. I've already taken care of it. Get off your high horse.
So I think you guys have reached that you're no longer the coach or the leader. I think you have the Band-Aid has been ripped off.
I mean,
and you guys are now just arm in arm as you go through life.
It's like, and so he's 22. So some of you are going to listen and think like, what kind of a kid did he raise? That's so disrespectful. Why would you let him talk to you that way? And
he's very self-assured.
Maybe, but like he's also going to be 22. And sometimes you just can't take yourself too seriously. And we are a snarky family, but also like I could have been ticked at that and mad all day. And frankly, when I saw it, I was like, are you kidding me? Who does he think he is? But then I saw him again later that night and like it's fine.
The point of the positive part is he figured it out on his own. He was coming to you, telling you the story. He was having a problem, obstacle.
Right.
But then at the end of the day, he figured it out on his own.
He took care of it.
And it's a better case scenario.
Right.
For him. And so everything all worked out.
And by the way, I'd rather him tell me like jokingly, get off your high horse than him like floundering around. Not floundering is not the word, but like steaming underneath going like, why is she always giving me this advice? Why can't she just mind her own business?
Yeah.
Just tell it to my face and next time I'll zip
I
my
love
lip.
that about you guys. All right,
ladies.
We should all take a joke, especially when it comes to ourselves a little bit better. If we could just laugh at ourselves, a lot of our problems would be better.
Right. If we could all just get off our high horses.
Just get off your high horse. That's where we're going to end this.
Yes. Ladies.
This call or this episode.
Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you're following us on all our social media outlets, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok for the latest updates. www.lifeafterkids.com for all of our free resources and the blog. If you prefer to watch us instead of listen, we're over on YouTube. And you might even be able to catch some live streaming where you can ask us questions there. Yes, so stay tuned.
See our beautiful new set. We're so happy about it.
Yes.
Very aesthetic.
It is pretty nice. I think that's all I got. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you guys have a great day and an even better week.
Thanks for being here. And I was going to say, go get off your high horse, but we did that.
Thanks, ladies.